day to you, Guyana, and welcome to Facing the Nation. I am Malika Ramsey. Thank you very much for joining us for another informative week. First off, let me apologize to you. I know some of you are fussing now that because what you were viewing before me would have been today is the big day for the United States of America, not only for the U.S., but all around the world. People like us who pay attention to what's happening in the wider world. I know some of you are fussing a bit because we had to cut the inauguration to show Facing the Nation. But always remember that we still have our own issues here at home to deal with. So for those of you who are going to stay tuned, thank you very much for doing that. And I know some of you do follow me on social media. So even if you missed my conversation today, you can always catch it a little later on social media. That's whether you follow me on YouTube or on Facebook. Well, today we are talking two areas. They're in a sense connected. The first half of the program is dedicated to the Ministry of Natural Resources. This conversation comes at an opportune time. As you know, we are preparing to benefit, to gain big, and to develop our country from oil. Continued reports of oil findings, and the government, more so the Ministry of Natural Resources, is already on a path to ensuring that whatever and in however we're going to benefit from that we do it in a proper manner, that we comply with all the rules and regulations, and of course that would first and foremost benefit our people. We're not specifically only focusing on oil today, but the Ministry of Natural Resources. And it's my pleasure to have for the first time on this program, he is Mr. Derrick Lawrence. He is the Compliance Director at the Ministry of Natural Resources. So we're going to be talking about a whole lot of things, more so a task force that was recently set up. He'll tell you more about that. And also in terms of rules and regulations in mining communities. That's a big issue for us. But first off, let me welcome Mr. Derrick Lawrence to Facing the Nation. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Malika.
All right. It's so great to have you.
I am so glad to be here.
All right. Wonderful. Viewers, I also know that you've grown accustomed to having two conversations, the first half and the second half of the program. The second half of the program will focus on trafficking in persons. As you know, earlier in the week there was a major launch, and the president gave the feature address in terms of how the government plans to address the issue of trafficking in persons. Even though we've had some improvement, more work needs to be done. He even announced that seven of our government ministers are a part of an action plan to deal with that. But like I said, you'll hear about that in the second half of the program. For now, let's talk to Director of Compliance, Derrick Lawrence, on his role. First off, sir, what is your role as Director of Compliance at the Ministry of Natural Resources?
Thank you. Great question. The Ministry of Natural Resources has an oversight responsibility for the regulatory agencies who manage and govern our natural resources sector.
Okay.
So we have agencies, for example, such as the Guyana Geology and Mines Commission, the Guyana Forestry Commission, Guyana Gold Board. And not so long ago, we used to have a number of other agencies under the Ministry of Natural Resources. But each of these agencies, in their own right, would be a regulatory body that is responsible for ensuring that the practitioners in the particular industries comply with and operate within all of the governing laws and regulations and codes of practices that bring order and stability and success to the operations in those industries.
Okay.
So our role at the ministry is to act as a coordinating agent to ensure that we have all of the agencies, we can understand what challenges they face, and at a ministerial level, bring whatever knowledge, expertise we're able to access to make things easier for the regulatory agencies.
Okay. Is this department a relatively new one, or did it exist before?
No, this is new. There used to be someone called the compliance manager before, but this is something that is really for the first time taking off in a way that it never did before.
As a new body, because, and of course, viewers, this is even before we get into mining, because I really want to touch on mining. As a new body, do you see challenges that would probably prevent efficient work and carrying out your duties and the aims and achieving the goals that you really want to achieve for the sectors?
Yes, there are always challenges in the sector.
Mm-hmm.
However, nothing is insurmountable. So I think what is critical is education, awareness campaigns. Once people understand that you exist to help and not hurt, then it fosters a greater level of cooperation between the regulatory agencies and the ministry, and between the ministry and the regulatory agencies and the practitioners in the industries.
Okay.
So most of the time the challenges would be resulting from a lack of understanding, or people wanting the opportunity to do some things without understanding what the consequences of an action might be.
Might be, okay, and then there are procedures and so on.
Right.
Okay. A task force. That was but that was big conversation late last year, of course. Viewers, I think Mr. Lawrence is laughing too, because you remember I was trying to get something out of him since last year, but he's here now, so that's good. The task force to set up, I think it is to ensure or to reduce illegal activities in mining communities. But you tell us about this task force, purpose of it.
Okay, so the first thing is I want to move away from the use of the term task force.
Task force.
And I'll tell you why.
Okay, great.
A task force suggests an armed force organized or put together for a special or particular operation, which suggests that once that operation has been successfully executed, there's no need for the task force. But what we're about to introduce into the natural resources sector of Guyana is something that I would want to refer to as the Guyana Natural Resources Corps Wardens. And so we're going to talk from this point about GNR wardens rather than
The
task
force. Okay, so that we can understand that it's ongoing. And
it is ongoing.
Great.
And it is ongoing because what it really attempts to do is to protect the environment, to ensure the proper conservation of Guyana's natural capital, and really to be in support of the other regulatory agencies that operate within the natural resources sector.
That don't necessarily only deal with mining.
No, it does not only deal with mining. Our footprint will run right across the natural resources sector. So we can be concentrating our energies one day on mining issues and another day on something that has to do with forestry, or something that has to do with the gold board. And as a matter of fact, to the extent that we're environmental and conservation, it's going to be an environmental and conservation law enforcement unit, if you will.
Okay.
To the extent that we're doing that, then we will be accessible to other agencies which do not immediately fall under the Ministry of Natural Resources, but their
Understood.
business is within the natural resources sector.
Okay, I'm happy that you mentioned the environment, because a little later on I'd like to talk about going green, because that is going to be a big thing for you to monitor, since the full green initiative for Guyana is a relatively new one. But for now, as we stay on mining, it's basically going to be addressing illegal activities in mining communities. Before we even talk about that, what are some of the negative economic impacts on illegal mining in our country that we indeed need to ensure is, if not stopped, completely minimized, the negative economic impacts?
Okay, well, since we're talking about the economic impact, the first thing is, if the mining operation is illegal, not necessarily always, but it provides an opportunity for non-declaration of whatever is produced. Because if you're illegal and no one knows you're operating where you're operating, and you can get into a number of other activities because now you're under the radar and not being monitored by the regulatory body. So the GGMC may not be aware of your existence, and you're operating illegally to the extent that they're not aware of your existence. You may or may not, you can find ways of declaring your goal, but you may opt not to. And in that case, the government or the people of Guyana would have lost part of what belongs to them. The other thing is that to the extent that you're legal, you didn't pay anything at all. You didn't pay any fees. You just walked away from the established regulatory body, and so you're not contributing to the economic efficacy of the body itself. Okay. You're not helping the government, and you're not helping the people of Guyana. But apart from the economic impact, there's one other thing that, as I'm here with you, I'd like to take the opportunity to say to those people who may be contemplating illegal mining. Now, if you're operating illegally, as I said, where you're not aware of your existence, you may be indulging in practices that are inimical to your best interest. In other words, you can be constructing a mining pit that can lead to fatalities, and that could have been avoided had the established regulatory body been aware of your existence, because they have wardens, they have mines officers who will go out and they will observe your operation and they will counsel you in terms of offer you advice.
That's if you're legal. That's if you do it the right way.
That's if you're doing it the right way. Mm-hmm. But if you're illegal, you're out there. Now, the reason I made this point is because I noticed during last year that a number of the fatalities that we had actually happened in pits that were not registered. We were unaware of their existence until we understood of what happened, including the last one that we had at Rock Creek and the Mazaruni, Kayuni Mazaruni. So, if you're listening and you're contemplating mining, it will be to your advantage in the long run to get registered the right way. Come into the GGMC or go to their field stations and express your interest in doing what you want to do, and you'll be properly guided, and that is safe for your health as well as it is healthy for the economy of Guyana.
I'd like to ask here, is there, that is for, again, if you, or those who have or are planning to contemplating to use your word, and it's strange that you would be contemplating to do something illegal, but for those who are contemplating illegal mining, is there also a danger to self in that you might find people who are even more unscrupulous than you are as an illegal miner who may want to take advantage of you? And we already have the issues of high crime rate in those faraway communities. Is there the concern that the possible or potential rather illegal miner could be endangering themselves in terms of exposing themselves to criminal elements who may want to take what they have?
Well, it's definitely exposing yourself to harm, because when we talk about illegal mining operations, one aspect of that is that you can be actively mining somebody else's property. And to the extent that you do so, that person may sometimes want to take independent action. And so you are at great risk.
Yes.
So it's bad from any angle you look at it. And it's something that should be discouraged. Once people know that once people know, as you pointed out, that you are doing this illegally,
yes,
then
that's where they take the law into their
people
own
may
hands.
pounce upon you at a time of their choosing, and that might be a time when you are at the point of washing down your goal, and one illegal activity invites another. So it is a practice to be discontinued, And that would be my strong encouragement to all those who are listening.
In terms of, the potential miners. Let's talk mining pits now. You did just touch on it. You talked about the fact that illegal miners would be endangering themselves and the people who work for them or with them. Are there special programs? Is there a special process, a procedure in place to have a more hands-on examination of the operations of mining pits so we can reduce those accidents? You did mention we've had too many, not only in the past year but years gone by, too many mining pit accidents where our greatest resources are taken. That's our human resources. Is there a procedure by the compliance department to ensure that we monitor these pits more closely?
Well, first of all, the 2012 amendment to the Mining Act calls for the appointment of a general manager over mining operations.
Okay.
And the GGMC, working in conjunction with the Guyana Mining School and Training Center, they have put together a program to train general managers. And this program will include certain aspects of safety, which is critical in that entire operation. And if people were to, understanding that you're going into business that is serious business, it pays, the remuneration can be great, but it also has risks. And the more knowledge you get, the more effective you will be in the pursuit of the goal you're after, and the safer you will be as well. And every life lost, as you know, has been a matter of serious concern.
Yes.
For His Excellency the President and for all of us in this business. So, if you have an operation, it would be useful to ensure that you get a qualified GM, one who had the opportunity to go to the mining school, the Guyana Mining School and Training Center, and learn, be exposed to all of the principles of good mining operation. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that in the past, mining, what we're calling small-scale mining now, it used to be on an even smaller scale.
Okay.
And somehow the pits were not dug as deeply as they are today. When you get into the depth of operation that is today done by whom we refer to as small and medium scale miners,
Yes.
the more expanded your operation becomes, the more there is a need for you to understand the geological engineering sciences that may not be so critical for you if your operation is on a very small scale. So the geotechnical sciences you find are in place in the large mining operations. So you wouldn't find a pit collapse in the large mining operations. I wouldn't say you would never find them, but we have not heard of them. That's not where the threat is or the risks are. It is with these smaller operations, which are getting into bigger stuff
Than they really
than
should.
they use right. And what they've left behind, they've gone ahead now with these operations, but they have not kept the pace in terms of bringing along with them the engineering competence to ensure that the pits are designed with safety in mind. So one gets enthusiastic about going after the goal, but they leave the sciences behind, and then they run into trouble. So it is critical that, and here again, this is one of the reasons I was pointing out, if you're operating as an illegal miner, you miss the opportunity to benefit from the GGMC's field engineers.
Yes, okay.
Because the GGMC,
They will tell you all.
they do have a number of field engineers who are very qualified and they know what they're doing, and they will come out and they will tell you, this here, this particular pit will lead to some kind of instability and offer you some advice. But if you're under the radar, they miss the opportunity to do that. You miss the opportunity to benefit from the technical competence that you need once your operation begins to expand.
Okay.
So that's one of the big problems that we're having in the industry, where people are not following the sciences. Now, I believe in this regard, the mining associations can be very helpful. And from all that I know, they have been attempting to be very helpful to miners as well. They too would appeal to their miners to observe certain safety precautions. One of the critical things, for example, if one is in a mining pit and he's involved in what they call jetting, where they're pushing water against the earth in the pit, then they try to ensure that that person is 1.5 times the distance of the height of the pit, so that if a collapse were to happen, that person can make his way out
easily.
It's
well,
still
not
some
necessarily
risk.
easily,
Yeah.
but there's the
A
chance
reduction
of
in the
survival
chances.
is right. It's greater.
So what the GGMC has been doing is they have been exposing, in response to these mining pit collapses, the GGMC has been exposing their technical staff to even more geological, geotech scientific training. And they have been increasing their own engineering capacity so that they can be even more effective in the field. In addition to that, they have hired occupational health and safety consultant who spent a number of hours working with the GGMC staff and providing the type of training that should see a reduction in those mining pit collapses.
All right, great. Sounds like that is under some amount of control. Viewers, if you're now tuning in, my discussion today is with Mr. Derrick Lawrence. He is the Director of Compliance at the Ministry of Natural Resources. We're talking a number of issues that fall under the Compliance Department as it relates to the Ministry of Natural Resources and all the sectors that fall under that ministry. Well, not all of them. We don't have enough time on this program to talk about all of them, but that's what's happening on today's program. Mr. Lawrence, now let's talk about oil exploration. We're still, I am no expert and the viewers know this, but I think we're still in the oil exploration phase. How does that affect, or I should ask you rather, how will the Department of Compliance be contributing to that? Again, this is very new for us, but let's hear from you, who I call the expert today.
Well, in the first place, as you know, you will have heard the Honorable Minister Raphael Trotman saying that within the first quarter of this year, we should see the emergence of a new regulatory body within the extractive industry sector. And that body is going to be called the Guyana Petroleum Commission. Now, that body will be responsible for the governance of that sector, that part of our natural resources sector. And obviously, this is all very new at this point. The way I see governance of any aspect of government, as a matter of fact, is that you always begin with the laws and the regulations and all of the things that stand up the governing of the organization. And then you look around to see where there are risks. You assess those risks and determine how to manage them. And then compliance comes in as the last aspect. When governance is established, risks are assessed, and compliance comes in to help us manage those risks and help people to stay in tune with the laws and regulations and so on. So we're a very early stage of this.
Okay.
And so the compliance department is not at this point
fully into the oil business
That's
yet.
right.
You're not into the oil business yet. Okay, fair enough. But I'm almost certain that, and you did say some as we go along, and you see too, and I'm happy that you did explain in the beginning that the department is it's a new one, so this is giving the department time to grow and develop and so on.
Absolutely.
So even before you take on the giant
Absolutely.
oil, because, and you know, everyone, the world seems to have eyes on our oil, so it's good that the Department of Compliance is getting time to grow. Earlier when we spoke about mining, and it's one of the things I jotted down here to talk to you about. It is always a concern that even when we're going on this path of growth and development, especially as a result of exploiting our natural resources and so on, people still get affected. One of the issues is always our citizens living in the hinterland communities. Most of the mining areas in the mining communities, they often are affected, not necessarily intentionally by these miners, but it happens. How do those communities fall under the Department of Compliance? Because I know there are ministries responsible for that, but are you going to contribute? Is there any way that you can contribute in terms of trying to minimize the effects that mining and other activities would have on these communities?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, to the effect that, to the extent that we are actually, as I said, getting ready to launch the GNR Corps of Wardens.
Yes.
And I pointed out that is going to be an environmental and conservation law enforcement unit. That means that we will be taking a very special interest in doing everything within our power to avoid the type of environmental degradation that can result from some kind of reckless or irresponsible mining operations, I want to call it.
Okay.
Because, you know, Guyana is a signatory to the Minamata Convention, for example, and we strive to ensure that miners do go into their business without the use of mercury. Mercury can have serious downstream effects for communities that live close or near to mining operations. So while the GDMC today, their mine officers will go and visit locations and they will issue cease work orders if they find people not in compliance and so on. The GNR Corps of Wardens, as part of their responsibility, they'll be patrolling the entire natural resources sector. And so will be focused on environmental issues and conservation issues. And if we do that, then we are effective in our law enforcement role, then the people who live in those communities will be the beneficiary of our operations.
Okay, perfect. Sounds like a plan. Now, it is almost time for me to wrap up my conversation with Mr. Derrick Lawrence. It certainly has been a pleasure, but I can't let you go without addressing the Green Initiative. Our President, His Excellency, President of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, Brigadier David Granger, has encouraged Guyana and somewhat given it to us, the Green Initiative, to run with it, to make our society, because we can benefit from a green initiative in so many ways, especially economically. What role is the Department of Compliance playing in ensuring that we get to that stage where we do benefit from a green initiative?
Well, all of these agencies that come under the Ministry of Natural Resources, they all have sometimes overlapping interests. So, for example, if a miner, an illegal person, an illegal miner, goes into a forestry concession and begins to just fell trees because they're going after, they're going after mining, and they can just not harvest the trees in any kind of responsible way, because there are systems that people should follow in doing those things. And the Guyana Forestry Commission, their rangers would patrol concessions and ensure that people are doing that the right way. But if a person just goes into an area where there's forest, a huge deforestation can take place. And that sort of thing interferes with your cloud coverage, your canopy. Trees will just be falling everywhere because people are just going through to do something that is for their personal benefit. It's not legal, it's not regulated, so they're not doing it the right way. And again, the Corps of Wardens, working in conjunction with the other regulatory agencies, will be able to bring about some stability, some order in that sort of thing. That's one. But in general, as I'm saying, if you go down our rivers, many of our rivers, they're the type of reckless and irresponsible river mining where people are mining the river banks, which is illegal.
Yes.
And can lead to serious environmental problems as they continue to do that with impunity. Well, again, if you have active patrolling of all of our natural capital, it would make a significant contribution to the government being able to achieve its Green Guyana agenda.
Perfectly said, Mr. Derrick Lawrence. Great. And of course, Facing the Nation is always here, and we're watching the growth of the Department of Compliance. It certainly has been a pleasure having you here on Facing the Nation today.
It was a pleasure of mine being here.
All right, great. Viewers, of course, if you missed it, this was a very informative conversation. All of the conversations here on Facing the Nation usually are, but it was a very informative and educating conversation with Director of Compliance at the Ministry of Natural Resources, Mr. Derrick Lawrence. Those of you who follow me on social media can catch it sometime this evening, both on my YouTube channel and also on Facebook. Of course, coming up in the second half of the program, I'll be dealing with some housekeeping matters, and of course we still have that issue of trafficking in persons, and you'll hear some sentiments the President made earlier this week. This is Facing the Nation. Stay tuned.